real estate deals are like buses. There's another one every 10 minutes. You just got to be patient. Well, I figured it out, but it lost me $250,000 when I figured it out, right? I learned a hard lesson that way. And so what happened? Well, I was able to generate over 60 confidentiality agreements signed through LinkedIn. We're not in the real estate business. We're in the information and relationship business. Well, where are two things? Where's a place that I can go and I can provide information and build relationships?
Hi, I'm George Pino, CEO of Commercial Brokers International. Thank you for joining us today. Today, I got a great guest star for us. It's Logan Freeman. He's out of Kansas City, also known as Mr. Kansas City. I'm going to have to deal and find out where you got that nickname in a minute, Logan. But Logan has a very diverse background, similar to mine, in that started off with the brokerage side, but also going into investments and doing quite a bit of investments on his own as well. And, I thought we'd explore that a little bit for all those of you that are interested in getting into either the brokerage side, but also more importantly, into the investment side. So Logan, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic, energized and ready to go, George. So
Good.
I really appreciate you having me on today.
Good. How's Kansas City treating you?
Today it is nice and beautiful and sunny and absolutely wonderful. So we can't complain about that. This time of year, obviously, we get all kinds of weather. So I mean, we had winter coats on earlier this week, and I've got shorts on today. So we're enjoying that.
Yeah, I heard that the whole Midwest or so is getting ready for some torrential rainstorm. So
Yeah, it's coming.
yeah, it's coming. So we'll see. Hopefully you stay dry.
Yeah.
So, Logan, what brought you to real estate? That's always a question I always like to ask people because, it's not necessarily the first choice. There aren't as many universities out there that really have like a real estate school or real estate development school. There's a few good ones. Shout out to USC there for my old alma mater. But generally, a lot of people just tend to fall into it. And I always find it interesting to see what brought you into commercial real estate.
Oh, getting fired from my last W-2 job, George. That was a pretty good entrance into the real estate industry. No, I mean, I grew up in Jefferson City, Missouri, which is the capital of Missouri for everyone out there on the coast. It's not Kansas City. It's not St. Louis. It's not Columbia or Springfield. It's Jefferson City, Missouri. And great growing up, right? I mean, it was a good place to live. Really identified as an athlete, so got a college scholarship to play football. Then I came out to your neck of the woods after college, played a little bit with the Raiders and got cut. And at that point, I went back to school to finish my master's degree. Well, in the master's program, they didn't have an entrepreneurship program set up. It was being created. And all I wanted to do was stay in the marketing and the actual business type of classes, the accounting, the statistics, all of that. Really had no interest. I had no interest. I mean, I remember, going through statistical regression analysis, and it's like now I can just put that into ChatGPT, and that thing is done in 2 seconds, right? And I'm sitting there learning how to do that. Maybe that was helpful. I don't know for sure. But what really drew me to the classes in the marketing side was a book by, I think it was Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit, and understanding how to actually get a product or a service out there in the marketplace. And so, when I got finished up with school, I had to get a job during school. So I worked full time and went to school full time, making 265 cold calls per day, and I was selling K through 12 data that we would scrape off of websites, and I would sell it to the vendors that were looking to market to those schools. It was a wonderful first foray into business. But here's what it taught me, George. It taught me that if someone says no to you, they're not telling you no personally. They're telling you no to the offer that you made them. And so you need to start making better offers. And I had an hour-long drive to that job and back to school. And so I would listen to, this was pre-podcast, believe it or not. I know I'm not that old, but I'm getting up there. And this was before really all the podcasts out there. So I had CDs.
You can say pre-podcast. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we were just talking about this the other day. We were talking about, I remember the first time somebody came to me and said, "Have you heard of this internet thing?"
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's going to be big.
Yes. Yeah,
and so that just dated me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I would pop in Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy, and Tony Robbins
Yeah.
and Jim Rohn, all of the godfathers of the
Okay.
personal development space, right? And I got better at selling K through 12 data. I was a top salesperson there. I knew I wasn't going to stay there. So finished up my schooling. I got a job with Jimmy John's as their youngest franchise consultant that they had ever hired. So I had 20 stores between Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, and Iowa. 12 months in, I said, hey, you guys rank these consultants 1 to 85, and I'm, top 5 every single month. Like, what's next for me? And they said, well, you're the youngest guy in the company. You've got to wait. You got to put your time in. And on that call, I gave him my 2 weeks. I didn't have what I was going to do, but I knew I wanted to go get paid for what I was worth. Well, I had bought a house in Kansas City and I was renovating it myself. Okay. So throughout this period of time, I go back into sales 100%, startup company, 3 employees, hitting the phones again, making it happen. This is in the transportation industry. So I land pilot programs with Swift and Warner and JB Hunt. And it was just a wild ride, right? It was pre any capital being raised though. So we were a little early. The technology wasn't quite there. And so I ended up leaving after 2.5 years. But in that period of time, I sold that first house that I had moved into, and it doubled my salary, selling that house, capital gains free because, living in it as a personal residence for 2 years. And so I had read books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I had read books from, other real estate investors really trying to learn this business. So fast forward a couple more years, I'm still in the workforce, still a W-2 guy. 2017 comes around. I'm married now. We moved into a different house. My wife's working at a startup company herself, and I'm fired. Private equity company comes in, lays off the whole sales team, and I'm jobless. And so my wife, supported me full-heartedly and said, whatever you decide to do, I've got your back. And that gave me the confidence to get out there and start what I called a sales consulting company. And so I grabbed Inc.'s fastest 5,000 company list, and I cold called the first 2,500 of them, and I landed 3 full-time sales consulting clients. Well, in the same period of time, the gentleman that was helping me flip some of these houses, selling them for me, basically said, "Hey, our head of acquisitions just left the company, and I just landed a $50 million fund from California, and we need to buy 200 homes." And I said, well, hey, I'm your guy, right? And so, in 12 months, I did close to 200 transactions, and I walked every single one of those houses. I made all of the offers. I estimated all of the rehab. We rented them all out, and then we were the 6th group in the country to go through a CoreVest portfolio refinance. And this is where my eyes were really opened up to a larger idea of real estate. They said, "Hey, I need you to go reappraise every single one of those houses." I said, "Okay." So we go through and reappraise every house. They're rented out, okay? And so we actually end up pulling out 85% of the equity, and the deals were still cash flowing in Kansas City. And so I sat down with these sponsors and I just said, "Look, how did you do that?" And they said, "Hey, we syndicated this equity." And I didn't even know what that meant, right? And so what did I do? I can still see the book over here. I think it was Sam Freshman or Sam something, the Bible of real estate syndication, right? So I grabbed that book. I start listening to the real estate guys, Russ Gray and those guys, and I go to their event. And I say, I think that's kind of what I want to do, but not on single family homes. I'd like to do that on multifamily and commercial, but I hadn't sold any of that, right? I didn't have any expertise in that. So I moved my license to a commercial brokerage, and I take this idea of representing 1031 exchanges to the managing broker. And she said, "Don't do that. You're going to waste your time, and you're going to deal with a lot of tire kickers." And I said, "Well, I think I can figure it out." Well, 2 years in, I outsold the rest of the whole brokerage combined, and I felt like I had something there, right? Okay, so I've done some transactions now. I've learned the business from other people doing those transactions, what worked, what didn't work. I thought it was time for me to go buy some real estate. And so I know we'll get into first deals here, so I won't talk about that right now, but I start to buy my own real estate, and had some success, had some failures, and realized, I needed to basically find some business partners that I could partner up with, and we could try to scale this business. And mind you, this is pre-COVID. So we're going into COVID. We had done a lot of shopping centers here in Kansas City. on the brokerage side. So we're going into COVID with about $35-40 million of shopping centers under contract. And March 18th or whatever the date was happens. And this term force majeure starts popping up. And we don't know if retail is going to be essential or if they're going to be shut down. So banks just completely fall out of retail, right? And so all of our financing dropped out. So we end up dropping all of those contracts, and we said, well, what are people going to need during this period of time? Well, apartments. They need to live somewhere. And so, this was a really unique period of time where we had this confluence of basically free debt. People couldn't get on airplanes to come look at apartment complexes in Kansas City. We're already here. So we end up picking up around 1,500 multifamily units across 4 states. And since then, we have jumped back into the commercial space, added close to 500, 600,000 square feet of neighborhood retail, office, and industrial to our portfolio. And we still have a commercial real estate brokerage, and we do somewhere between $50 to $100 million every single year, representing 1031 exchange clients, property owners. We do a lot of leasing as well. So I know that was a lot jam-packed in there, but I know we have a short amount of time. I just wanted to get all that out there.
I'm actually going to condense that down for you a little bit there, I think, because that's a lot of information, but I think there's one overwhelming kind of idea behind this. And it's something that you said earlier when your college didn't have an entrepreneur class or school or degree, and a lot of them didn't.
Yeah.
I think back when I went to college, there were only 2 that did. One was Harvard and one was USC.
Yep.
But other than that, I think entrepreneurship is the key here, what you're saying, because what you're telling me is how an entrepreneur thinks.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at it, but you're also seeing a need that should be fulfilled, and you're looking into it, then you're researching how other people did it, and then moving forward and doing it yourself, which is very similar to, I think, a lot of real estate agents. I think the key thing with real estate agents, and we have such a high attrition rate in this field.
Yes.
The numbers range anywhere from depending on who you're talking to, anywhere from 80 to 90% attrition rate the first year,
Yes.
and upwards of about 95% within the first 3 years. And I've seen that happen over and over, but I think what the key factor is, the majority of the ones that succeed all have that entrepreneurial spirit. They're not looking at this as whether they're with one of the large firms like CBRE or JLL, if they're with a more boutique-ish, smaller or medium-sized firm or regional firm. They're not looking at it as the firm is the company, I'm just an employee. They look at it as, this is my business.
That's right.
How am I going to structure it? How am I going to treat it? How am I going to go forward? And how am I going to succeed? And I think that's the key thing. It's that whole entrepreneurship thing. But speaking of education, one of the things I've noticed, and it also, as a side note, I got into real estate because I was also laid off.
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
Actually, I was already in real estate, but both my business partner and I were at the same company, and we were paid W-2 employees, and then we both got laid off, and we went off and started a competing company. And in 2 years, I think we were taking about 40% of their business in California.
Wow. Yeah.
That felt good.
Yeah, I bet it did.
It did. But the education that we learned, and more importantly at that time, I mean, I was very young at the time. I think I was, I got in right after college. I was 22 when I first started into real estate. But then when I first started into an actual 1099 brokerage agent position, I was, I think, 28 at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
And, there were things I wish that my parents now had taught me or told me, or investors I had talked to, such as don't sell, hold as long as you can. But, at the time we had to flip things, stuff like that. But I also learned quite a bit from a lot of my clients from the brokerage side, meaning I learned from their mistakes. I learned how they looked at properties, which were different than, like, a developer looks at a property much more differently than any investor. It's taking those lessons, which I think are invaluable, and you can cross it with the beautiful part about the brokerage side is you're dealing with multiple people, so you're having different conversations and you're feeling it, as opposed to just working for somebody, one person. This is how they do it, and this is how you're going to end up doing it. So I think that's a wonderful thing about brokerage. So that gives me to my second question, which is, what's one of the best lessons, business-wise or anything else, that you ever got from a client as a broker.
Yeah. I mean, real estate deals are like buses. There's another one every 10 minutes. You just got to be patient. And I know that's hard as acquisitions folks, as brokers, and all these individuals living off of transactions. But this gentleman is the most successful real estate investor that I've ever been a part of and have met. And he said that to me, and that really struck with me because it was like, look, you have to have a mentality of if this does not fit what I'm trying to do, stop trying to make it fit. Just wait and go find something else and be patient. And it kind of reminds me of what like John Wooden said, which was, be quick, but don't hurry, right? Speed wins, but you also can't get yourself in a hurry because if you do, you start missing things. And in this business, little things become big things very quickly. And so I think that was probably one of the best pieces of advice that I got from one of my clients.
Okay, I love that. I also like the John Wooden comment as well. That's great. Now transitioning, as you know, one of the things I noticed is that when we started doing our first investments, although we had a little bit we could bounce off and with other investors and talk to them, and Lord knows I did, or we did, my business partner and I, we did. We anybody that had properties or did what we thought we wanted to do, we'd ask them. So I
Yeah.
just and but we still made some mistakes, and we learned from those. And I think that's one of the key things is going into it understanding that you're going to make mistakes. Nothing is ever necessarily exactly how you planned it. It's a matter of how you adapt to it and adjust. What were some mistakes that you ran into when you first started doing investing on your own?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first and foremost, I needed to lose my ego, and up to that point of doing so many transactions, everything I had the Midas touch. Everything had turned to gold. It just worked out. I'll figure it out. Until I bought a property that was built in the 1800s and I had to do complete historic readaptive use projects. So I got out of what Buffett calls, the circle of competency, right? And so I saw an opportunity and I thought it was a really good opportunity. And it turned out to be a really good opportunity, but I didn't have the experience or the knowledge to actually make that a reality. But I was too caught up in myself to say, well, I can figure it out. Well, I figured it out, but it lost me $250,000 when I figured it out, right? I learned a hard lesson that way. And so what happened? Well, I tried to ensure that when we went to, interacting and interviewing general contractors, I basically had a self-fulfilling prophecy of I need the budget to be this number. And then I went and found a contractor that would say, hey, we can make it happen in this number, but they didn't have any experience doing historic readaptive use projects. And we didn't know that we were going to have to shut down one of the busiest streets in Kansas City for 6 hours to put new water pipes in, or that tuck pointing bid that we thought was going to be $55,000 ended up being $195,000. And our budget just with those two line items, was already blown by over $200,000, right? And so the lesson that I learned was that if someone experienced is telling you something that you don't want to hear, you need to open your ears and listen, because it's hard to hear, but it's probably the right information, right? And I was so caught up in saying, no, that just can't be right. I've got other people telling me that we can make this happen and we can fit this square peg into the round hole and it's going to be just fine. Well, it didn't. It didn't work out. And so now I think that lesson is you pay for what you get what you pay for. And so every time I'm looking at a new acquisition or working with someone, I am making sure that the vendors and the folks that I'm working with have been there before and have done that and likely are a little bit older than me.
I appreciate the age comment. But honestly, I've seen some amazing. A few years ago, if you had asked me this about the generation that was coming in, probably about 7, 8 years ago, I'd have a little concern, a little bit more.
Sure.
So this younger generation that just recently graduated post-COVID out of college, wow. I'm pretty impressed with them. I mean, I'm seeing the big work ethic, a lot of thought process, and a lot of critical thinking, which I think has always been lacking for the last decade or two.
Yeah.
Critical thinking aspect. So, the circle of competency, what you had mentioned before with Buffett, what he was saying and stuff, I think that's a key aspect. I think a lot of people lose focus in that they're chasing the dollar or chasing the deal versus actually looking at the deal, making it work, not putting, like you said, a square peg into a round hole, so to speak. Now, have you been able to like maybe go, or have you ever experienced an issue where you've gone into an investment, it wasn't exactly what you anticipated, but you were able to adapt and turn quickly enough to still do well, and learn your lessons from that, but still be able to save it? And how did that look?
Absolutely. So, my second investment was a mixed use building that has a bagel shop on the main level and had Airbnbs on the top levels, right? And so we have kind of this mixed use component in a thriving neighborhood. It's doing really well. Very excited about it. And really early on into our engagement, we realized that we were paying for a third party property manager on the short term rental because we thought we couldn't do it because it was going to take too much time or it was going to be too onerous for us to do. And they were sucking all of the profits out of the business. And really, the work that we were getting done was automated from their end anyways. And so we were able to pivot about 6 months in and say, hey, I think we can build this, this platform and manage this process ourselves. So we went out and we found the vendors to clean, to do the laundry. We found a software service to do dynamic pricing models for us and figure out, hey, this was before artificial intelligence, but it was, you would train a chat bot that could respond back to people and say, hey, if this is after hours, here's what you need to do with the most frequently asked questions. And, that added 25% of profit to that project. And we've been self-managing it now for 5 or 6 years. So absolutely, been able to pivot and move and change and iterate quickly on that. Basically breaking self-limiting beliefs going into those real estate deals, saying I can't do this. Somebody else is probably better at that. I've learned that most of the time when you're investing your own dollars, you need to be able to learn the processes that are, creating your cash flow, right? And so, just because I thought I couldn't do it, was costing us quite a bit of money. We went in there, we figured it out, we rolled up the sleeves, and now it's been cash flowing ever since.
Okay, nice, nice. So, one of the things that you also mentioned, I want to kind of touch on this because this is kind of key to exactly what we're doing right now. A little bit is that you're saying one of the comments I think I've read on one of your posts or articles that you had written was something about a lot of businesses don't fail because of funding.
Mm.
They fail because of obscurity.
Yeah,
And I think that this industry is definitely in need of a little bit of infusion of some new blood. We're starting to see it. You're even seeing some of the older guys. Shout out to Ken Ashley over at Cushman and Wakefield out of Atlanta, who started the CREI Summit, the Commercial Real Estate Influencer Summit, who is it's geared specifically toward commercial real estate agents that are utilizing social media platforms to engage their business and grow it. Traditionally, commercial real estate never did that.
sure.
In addition to that, even commercial developers didn't really do that. I mean, you hear about the residential developers and where they are, but all of a sudden it's like, who are they? Oh, they're the largest. They're 3 times the size of XYZ Homes, KB Homes, or whoever else. But they never really promoted themselves and said who they are. I think now that's been changing a little bit. Perhaps it may be part of the fact that certain developers have created, like for instance, Caruso with his lifestyle centers.
Yep.
So they're branding themselves now, but I think that also brings it and makes it a little bit easier. They're finding out that it's leasing faster, if they know that they had names attached to it because there's a sense of quality or size or experience behind it. Are you seeing that both in your industry as far as from commercial real estate agents in Kansas City area, and also are you seeing that in from the development side point if your developers are doing that a little bit as well?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that people invest in people, not necessarily in businesses. And, this information asymmetry from where our model was as commercial real estate brokers and developers has now been blown open, blown wide open to information parity. Now we're drowning in too much information,
Yeah.
right? And so a broker's job is to put context to data that they are seeing in the marketplace and to have what I'll call proprietary data that is different than what they're seeing on LoopNet and Crexi and CoStar because they are operating and doing deals on a regular basis, right? Okay, so that's really important. Now, being able to create your own brand and audience online is easier than it ever has been. It's not easy, but it is simple. And I have been doing this for 9 years on LinkedIn and created a following over 32,000 people now and have a LinkedIn top voice. And when I put things out, people look to that as information that they're reviewing because where are people getting their news from? I don't watch the news. If I don't see it on LinkedIn, I'm probably not going to know what's going on in the country and in the world, right? And so, that's similar to other people in the industry with TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all these different platforms. Okay, so if that's the case, attention is the new currency. And how do you get attention? Well, you have to have good information. I always say that, from Bob Knackle, I always say that, we're not in the real estate business. We're in the information and relationship business. Well, where are two things? Where's a place that I can go and I can provide information and build relationship? Well, it is online. So 9 years ago, I said, if I look back 9 years from now, am I going to be upset that I, posted every single day and had to find something valuable to add value to my network? Or am I going to be more upset that I didn't do anything over those nine years? And now looking back, all of the business that has been generated in relationships, we wouldn't be sitting here today, likely, if I wasn't on LinkedIn. And so I'm seeing this with commercial real estate brokers starting to really adopt video. I'm seeing it with developers branding their communities, they're positioning their properties differently. I'm seeing it with vendors that are operating within the space, and I think that as property owners and brokers and folks that are making decisions that businesses become younger and younger, the online marketplace is just continuing to increase. And so for me, it is now a competitive advantage, and I am winning listings and finding business because I'm able to say, where else, what other broker in the Kansas City market will be able to put your listing up and get over 50,000 impressions on your property?
Yeah.
Prime example would be a listing that I'm taking live. I was able to generate over 60 confidentiality agreements signed through LinkedIn, that I didn't have as buyers and that I had no idea were interested in Kansas City multifamily. So I think it's happening on a regular basis. And my number one tip for anyone that is trying to get started is just get started and stay consistent, because the consistency is what creates creates clarity, and it takes that obscurity away. And so that is my number one tip, is just
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And the reason why I say that, I mean, we literally were advising a younger agent what they're, we're going back and looking at the last quarter yesterday.
Yeah.
And our biggest thing that we said was consistency. I mean, I think I agree with you 100% there. I also agree with you that, in this day and age, it is ripe for a younger, the model of I'm going to be your mentee for the next 5 years, and then I'll be a junior agent on my own for the next 3 or 4, and then maybe a senior agent, and then really not really growing into that until your 10th year or so. I think that's broken. In this day and age, especially right now, you can get out there and you can dominate a market just through marketing, as if you do it right. And I've seen it happen over and over. There's a couple agents in our submarket in LA that, they've been in the market within maybe 5 years in commercial real estate and in this market. And yet they're dominating what they're doing. They're doing $20 to $50 million each personally in sales a year, and or about 200,000 or so square feet in leasing. And they're really taking over that market, and you see their names and the branding. And I think a lot of that is themselves just branding, getting it out there. There are other agents doing as much business, but you don't see them out there.
That's
And
exactly right.
it definitely brings it up. It also, one of the tactics we used to use way back in the day was we were preferred contributors to a lot of the different commercial real estate platforms like Globe Street and things like that. So,
Sure.
we would purposely write articles that we would push to get published, and they got published. But then we redo our script when we're pitching somebody, and take them down the path. And as soon as they bring up what we're trying to get them to bring up, we'll say, "Oh, I just wrote an article about that. It's in
Yep.
grocery. You should take a look at it. I'll email it to you afterwards." When you do that, your success rate jumps up
Absolutely
tremendously.
does. Yeah, I mean, over the last 90 days, I track everything religiously. I'm sure you
Yeah.
mentor and coach people on this on a regular basis. I've had 147 scheduled meetings the last 90 days, 266 meaningful conversations, and I've added 1,507 followers off of LinkedIn. Well, I can tell you a lot of those meetings and meaningful conversations came directly from that. And what does that translate to? It translates to an active pipeline right now
Mhm.
of over $65 million in real estate. And in
Yeah.
Kansas City, that is a big amount if we can go transact that real estate. So, I mean, that's
Absolutely.
that's that's the
In
the
any market. Don't I like the humbleness, Logan, but and I see it, you're Midwest, all that, but don't take anything off of what you're doing. 65
yeah,
million is a pretty impressive number for any agent, out.
absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's the important part to say is like, I now have over 1,500 new people that I might be able to do some sort of business with in the future, and that is driving conversations and driving transactions.
Awesome. I think there's a lot of valuable information here, and I love it. I'd love the opportunity, maybe, once we get some feedback from some of the viewers, maybe to revisit that and come back and have another video and conversation about that. But, I promised you I wouldn't keep you more than half an hour, and we're kind
Yeah.
of at that time frame right now. And so I'm going to call it, but, I love it. I thank you so much for being on the show here, and for all of those who are just seeing this organically. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe. And if you like what you've heard and you think it brings value, because I think it does as well, hit that like button. All right. So thank you so much.